Imagine a city of 500,000 people, no electricity, no running water, no fire department worth mentioning. Just timber, crowded streets, and a river that never stopped moving. This is London in the 1600s, and it was already one of the most extraordinary places on Earth. Today, I'm using modern AI tools to bring historic paintings and engravings back to life, shifting perspectives, changing camera angles, moving through scenes their original artists could only ever see from one fixed point. And I want to take you somewhere most people have never really looked at. Not the London of kings and parliaments, the London of bridges, fire and river traffic. The London that was simultaneously a neighborhood, a marketplace, a prison and a symbol. Stay with me, because one of these places is going to genuinely surprise you. Let's start here, because before I began researching this video, I genuinely didn't know how remarkable this structure was, and I suspect most people don't either. Old London Bridge in the 1600s was not simply a way to cross the Thames, it was a street. Suspended above water, houses, shops, warehouses, chapels, gatehouses, all of it crowded onto a bridge so densely built that from a distance it didn't look like a bridge at all. It looked like a continuous neighborhood that happened to be floating above a river. Think about what that actually means. People were born on this bridge. They lived their entire lives on it. They ran businesses, raised children, argued with neighbors, all while carts and horses and pedestrians passed constantly beneath their windows, and the Thames rushed through narrow stone arches directly below their feet. And those arches, that's where it gets dangerous. The bridge's massive stone piers were so tightly spaced that they constricted the tidal flow of the river. The result was powerful, unpredictable surges of water beneath the bridge. River traffic attempting to pass through faced conditions that experienced watermen described as shooting rapids in the middle of a city. Accidents were common. Drownings happened regularly. There was even a saying among Londoners: the bridge was made for wise men to go over and fools to go under. The buildings on the bridge rose several stories high, often projecting outward over the roadway below, blocking light and air. The streets were dark. The noise was constant. Fire was a permanent risk. Buildings this close together, this densely packed with open flames in every home and workshop. And yet people stayed. For centuries. Here's what I keep coming back to when I look at these images. This bridge was the only permanent crossing of the Thames in central London until the 18th century. Every person moving north or south through the city had to cross it. Kings on their way to coronations, criminals on their way to execution, merchants, labourers, immigrants seeing London for the first time. The heads of executed traitors were displayed on poles above the southern gatehouse, a visible reminder right at the entrance to the city of what happened to those who challenged the crown. Newcomers arriving in London saw this before they saw anything else. One entrance, one crossing, one bridge that contained multitudes. This view shows the northern entrance, approached through the area beside St. Magnus the Martyr's Church, visible to the left. By the mid-18th century, the bridge had deteriorated so badly that officials finally cleared it. Between 1756 and 1762, centuries of buildings were gradually demolished. What makes Old London Bridge remarkable isn't just the engineering. It's the fact that it functioned simultaneously as infrastructure, marketplace, neighborhood, and symbol for hundreds of years. Sometimes I genuinely wish I could step back and experience it for even a single day. For now, this AI reconstruction is as close as I can get. Now let's move west, away from the noise of the bridge, away from the crowded commercial core of the city. This is Buckingham House in the late 17th and early 18th century. Before it became Buckingham Palace, before the guards, the crowds, the ceremonial gates. At this point, it was simply a private townhouse built on the western edge of London by the Duke of Buckingham. It stood apart from the city's dense core, surrounded by open land and gardens, with fields stretching beyond it toward the countryside. What strikes me looking at this image is where it sits. Right here, at this moment, you could feel the edge of London. The city ended here. Beyond this point, open land. Today that feels almost impossible to imagine. The palace sits at the center of one of the most visited places on earth. But in the 1600s, this was the boundary. Urban London on one side, the countryside on the other. A single building marking the line between the world that existed and the world that was coming. September 1666. It starts small, a bakery on Pudding Lane. A fire that most people initially assumed would burn itself out by morning. It didn't. London in 1666 was built almost entirely of timber. Buildings leaned into each other across narrow streets, creating channels that funneled wind and heat. The city had no coordinated firefighting capability, and the summer of 1666 had been exceptionally dry. The first image I want to show you is Ludgate in flames, with old St. Paul's Cathedral visible in the distance, its tower already threatened. This was one of the largest and most recognizable buildings in England, a landmark that had stood for centuries. Within days, it was gone. The second view is from across the Thames, near Tower Wharf, on the evening of September 4th. Look at what you're seeing. London as a continuous wall of fire, the entire skyline, burning. To the left, London Bridge. To the right, the Tower of London, which narrowly escaped destruction. And at the center of it all, Old St. Paul's, fully consumed. In just 4 days, the Great Fire destroyed roughly 13,000 houses, 87 churches, and most of the medieval city that had existed since the Norman conquest. But here's what history often skips over. The fire also cleared the way. Centuries of overcrowded, disease-ridden, fire-prone medieval construction gone. What rose in its place was a different London. More planned, more permanent. Built in brick and stone rather than timber. Destruction that forced reinvention. It's one of the great pivots in London's history. And standing here, looking at those images of the skyline consumed by flame, it's hard not to feel the weight of what was lost and what was made possible. Before we continue, I want to pause for a moment. We've already covered a bridge that was its own neighborhood, a house that would become one of the world's most famous palaces, and a fire that erased and rebuilt a city. And we're not done yet. If this kind of history is landing for you, if you're seeing these places differently than you did 10 minutes ago, drop something in the comments. Tell me which image hit you hardest, or which place you'd most want to walk through if you could. And if you want to keep going on journeys like this one, hit subscribe and leave a like. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. Now, let's keep going. Rising above the river on the eastern edge of the city, the Tower of London. By the 1600s, this wasn't just a fortress anymore. It was a symbol of the English state in its most concentrated form. It held royal records, weapons, the crown jewels. It functioned as an arsenal and a treasury simultaneously, and it was a prison. Not for ordinary criminals, for people whose existence had become inconvenient to the crown. High-profile prisoners accused of treason were held within these walls. Some were executed on Tower Hill, just outside. Others spent years inside, writing letters, pacing corridors, watching the river through narrow windows. The Thames flowed directly past the tower's southern wall. Prisoners arriving by boat entered through Traitor's Gate, a water gate at river level, so called because that was the entrance through which traitors were brought. Some of the most famous names in English history passed through that gate. The tower is still there today. You can stand at the same spot where these images were made. The river still flows past the same walls. Some buildings carry their history visibly. The Tower of London carries it in every stone. 1638, Cheapside. This is one of London's most important streets. But what's happening here isn't commerce, it's theatre. Marie de Medici, the Queen Mother of France, is entering the city in a formal procession to visit her daughter, Queen Henrietta Maria, and King Charles I. Look at the street, crowds lining every inch of space, soldiers holding formation, officials in ceremonial dress. And at the centre, the Cheapside Cross, a medieval landmark that had stood here since the 13th century as a monument and gathering point. Cheapside was where London went to see and be seen. Royal processions moved through it. Public executions happened nearby. Markets filled it daily. It was simultaneously the city's commercial spine and its ceremonial stage. But look at what's happening beneath the spectacle. This is 1638. England is 3 years away from civil war. Parliament and the Crown are already in open conflict. Charles I's relationship with his Parliament is deteriorating by the month. And his Catholic Queen, French, foreign, politically controversial, is standing at the centre of a public ceremony in a city that deeply distrusted her faith and her influence. The procession looks like celebration. It's also a provocation. Today, this same stretch survives as modern Cheapside in the City of London. The street remains. The medieval cross is gone. The crowds are still there, just wearing different clothes. 1647. England is in the middle of a civil war. This image shows the Westminster complex viewed from across the Thames, and every building in it is charged with political meaning. On the left, the old Palace of Westminster, the seat of Parliament. By this point, the focal point of the conflict between the monarchy and the institution that was trying to constrain it. 2 years after this image, King Charles I would be tried in Westminster Hall and executed in front of the banqueting house. At the centre, Westminster Hall itself, one of the oldest surviving parts of the palace. For centuries it had been used for courts of law, state trials and public gatherings. It was here that kings had feasted, and here that a king would soon face a death sentence. To the right, Westminster Abbey, the spiritual heart of the nation, coronations, royal funerals, the burial place of rulers going back to William the Conqueror. And at the centre of the image, Westminster Stairs, a busy river landing where travellers arrived and departed by boat. In this era, the Thames wasn't just a backdrop, it was the city's main artery. The fastest way to move across London was by river, not road. Look at this image knowing what's about to happen. The buildings are quiet, the river is calm, the city looks almost peaceful. But within 2 years, everything is about to change. The Palace of Whitehall in 1643, the largest royal residence in England, stretching along the Thames for hundreds of metres, not a single building, but a vast complex of halls, courtyards, chambers, and administrative spaces where the business of royal government was conducted. At its peak, Whitehall had over 1,500 rooms. It was less a palace than a small city built around the presence of the monarch. Most of it no longer exists. In 1698, a fire destroyed almost the entire complex. What had taken centuries to build was gone in hours. Only the banqueting house survived, the same building where Charles I had walked to his execution nearly 50 years earlier. Today, if you walk down Whitehall in London, you're walking through the ghost of this place. The street carries the name, the banqueting house still stands, but the vast complex that once defined the western edge of the city is entirely gone. Sometimes the most significant buildings leave the smallest traces. One last place, further from the city, quieter, Richmond Palace in the 16th and early 17th centuries. Originally rebuilt by Henry VII, who gave it the name Richmond after his earldom in Yorkshire. It became one of the most beloved royal retreats outside central London, a place where Tudor monarchs came to rest, to hunt, to step back from the pressures of court. Elizabeth I spent her final days here in March 1603, after a reign of nearly 45 years, one of the longest and most consequential in English history. She died at Richmond Palace. With her death, the Tudor dynasty ended. The throne passed to James VI of Scotland, who became James I of England, beginning the Stuart era. A dynasty ending in a quiet room, away from the city, beside a river. Richmond Palace largely fell into ruin after the Civil War. Today, almost nothing survives of the original structure. A gateway and fragments of the old walls are all that remain. But standing there, even now, you can feel the weight of what happened in that place. Some histories are carried in ruins. Standing here, looking back across all of these moments, the bridge where a city crossed itself, the house that became a palace, the fire that erased and rebuilt everything, the tower where power imprisoned its enemies, the palace that burned and left almost no trace. What strikes me most is how close it all is. Not in miles. In time, these streets, these buildings, these decisions, they created the shape of the world we move through today. The bend of the river, the position of the bridge, the street that survived a fire and became the street you walk on now. Through these AI reconstructions, we get something rare. Not just a picture of the past, a perspective inside it. And every time I build one of these, I come away thinking the same thing. The past isn't behind us. It's underneath us, holding everything up. Thank you for watching all the way through. It genuinely means a lot. If any of these places stayed with you, if one of these images hit differently than you expected, leave a like. It helps more people find this kind of content. Subscribe if you want to keep stepping into moments like these, and drop a comment. Which city, which era, or which moment in history would you most want to see brought back to life? Because the next reconstruction is already in progress, and it might be the place you've been waiting for.
I don't think you'll be able to click on the next video before time runs out.